See what happens. Welcome everyone to the October 3rd, 2023 City Council meeting. Please let the record reflect that all council members are present with the exception of Vice Chair Ritchie, so Council Member Lopez. But we do have Council Member White online. Would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining. And I forgot to ask, would you mind doing the pledge? I'll ask our Council Member Nadolski to do the Pledge of Allegiance, if you don't mind.
Please rise if you're able.
Thank you. I remembered your name. I just forget which meeting we were in. Board Member. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I didn't get your name, I promise. I was like, are you a board member? Who are you? I can't remember you. Okay, please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. And would anybody like to offer any acknowledgements this evening? The only acknowledgement I have is that there's a whole bunch of different council member and mayoral debates happening, so you should definitely pay attention to all those. I think there's about 10 mayoral debates coming up. We had the first one last night at LUPEC, which was really wonderful. Well, LUPEC hosted at the Weber State University Community Education Center. That was the first kind of Hispanic community-focused debate that has been held that we know of, so it's really exciting. Make sure you get out there and get informed and then vote when the time comes. We're really excited this evening to have the YCC Family Crisis Center here. The request to be on the agenda. They'd like to come and share with us a little bit about domestic violence awareness event that is being held, and then also, of course, tell us more about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Now, welcome those representatives here. We have Ashley Daniels and Amber Pasco. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you, Angela. So yes, my name is Amber Paso. I'm the Victim Assistance Director at YCC Family Crisis Center. I want to thank the City Council members, City Council staff, and guests for this opportunity to spotlight a disturbing issue that impacts our community, domestic violence, also known as intimate partner violence. October, as you know, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this challenges all of us to shed light on a grave concern that demands our attention. Domestic violence is a pervasive problem that affects people of all backgrounds, regardless of their age, gender, race, sexuality, or socioeconomic status. It knows no boundaries, and it inflicts physical, emotional, and psychological harm on its victims. Domestic violence is not a private matter. It is, in fact, a public health issue with life-altering consequences. The statistics are stark and unsettling. In many communities, domestic violence accounts for a significant percentage of homicides. This connection between intimate partner violence and homicide is a stark reminder of the urgent need to address the root causes of domestic violence and provide support to its survivors. One of the most distressing aspects of this issue is the tragic loss of lives within our community. When domestic violence escalates, it can culminate in homicide, leaving families shattered and communities grieving, including our own. This past year, we have families grieving. The families grieving of Madison Stacker, who was age 25, of Suzanne Mayer, who was age 61, of Jacelyn Gray Trevino, who was only age 28, and Tina Renee Prophet, who was age 54. Since October of last year, these 4 women lost their lives to domestic violence. Let's think about that and just take a moment of silence, please. In the past year, there have been 12 homicides in Weber County. This means that 1 out of 3 of those victims were victims of domestic violence. More striking is that 3 others lost their lives in connection with domestic violence. These were officer-involved shootings connected to DV incidences. So the reality is that 58% of homicides in our county are directly related to domestic violence. These tragedies are often shrouded in secrecy and fear, but it's imperative that we bring this issue out of the shadows and into the light. Domestic violence thrives in silence, but it can be defeated through awareness, compassion, and action. On behalf of the YCC and the Weber Morgan County Domestic Violence Coalition, I invite all of you and our community members to our annual Footsteps to Light this Thursday at 4:30 in front of the Ogden Amphitheater. We must all work together as a society to break the cycle of violence, protect the vulnerable, and ensure that no one lives in fear within their own homes. By raising our voices, demanding change, and supporting survivors, we can create a safer, more compassionate community where love and respect triumph over violence and tragedy. Together, we can truly make a difference to save lives. And in fact, together with law enforcement, we are saving lives with the lethality assessment protocol. Since July, all law enforcement agencies are required to complete a lethality assessment for any domestic violence victim in Utah. I would now like to turn it over to Ashley Daniels, our LAP coordinator and domestic violence advocate, to talk about what has been accomplished with these protocols.
Hi, everyone. I am Ashley, and I work at YCC. Thank you, Amber, for the introduction, and thanks for letting us be here today and have the floor for just a few moments. As a victim advocate and lethality assessment program coordinator in the city of Ogden, I see the devastating toll domestic violence takes on so many members of my own community. People are often shocked to learn just how many survivors YCC serves. And even more shocked to learn how prevalent intimate partner violence is throughout our own city, our state, and our entire nation. The lethality assessment, for those of you who don't know, is a tool used by law enforcement to identify individuals statistically at risk of being murdered by their intimate partner and connect them to vital services. In 2022, YCC alone received 421 high-risk referrals from law enforcement partners. 219 of those referrals were from Ogden City Police Department. As of August this year, we have received a total of 363 high-risk referrals, which is a 29% increase from last year at the same time. With the implementation of the new law requiring officers to administer the lethality screen, the identification of victims in life-threatening situations continues to grow. But identification is only the first step. Providing support, resources, and hope to survivors is something that we can all take part in. Recognizing the signs of abuse and promoting healthy relationships are small steps that we can all take towards a future without violence in our community. Throughout October and every other month of the year, we can spread awareness and take a stand against domestic violence. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all of your service so much at YCC. And I have to say, I'm really lucky to serve on the board of the YCC this past year. And I know our own Captain Scott also serves on that board too of the Ogden Police Department. So we appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments anybody would like to make?
Chair, I do have a question.
Yeah.
We had a little incident in our neighborhood that it was kind of around this domestic violence issue. A woman committed suicide that had been, pretty well verbally abused. At least that's what we knew of. And we as neighbors had gone together and try to rally around her and encourage her to go to the YCC and all of these kind of things. And she said, "Oh yeah, we will. I'll do that." And but in the end, she committed suicide. And we just wonder what other tools do just the people that are close, the what can they do? How do they read it, and how do they encourage it better than just to hug them and encourage? That's. I'm sorry to ask this question, but it's just recent
No.
in my neighborhood. So
Yeah, I'm glad you asked it. I think everybody has their own questions. It affects everybody at some point. The first piece of advice I give is just to listen, believe. You don't have to understand it first and foremost, but you do have to do your best to just give your support and believe that person. They're going through their own war inside that home. And what's really difficult is there may not be any laws being broken. Verbal abuse is not illegal, but it's absolutely devastating, and most survivors will tell you it has much more lasting impacts than the physical abuse.
Sure.
So I think what you did was probably a great start if anybody did reach out and listen. Other than that, one of the first things that I tell people, we'll have supporters or secondary survivors come to us and say, I have this person, I have a family member that needs help and they just don't know where to start. Honestly, the confidentiality piece that YCC carries goes a long way. The minute someone understands that their secrets are safe with us, that we are a safe space and we can provide that, it does at least shed a little light and open up a little bit of a door to them being able to talk to someone without the rest of the community knowing what's going on or knowing their story. So offering services, connecting them to services, and just being patient and not wavering from that support is the biggest thing we can all do.
Could we have called your office and told you about this situation, and would something have happened on the other end?
Right. No. So with that confidentiality piece, anything that you would have told me would have stayed right here with me. I can't reach out and contact people unless those referrals come from law enforcement. That is one huge step that's been made. But most of the time, I could give you my number to pass on or those types of things and just help you understand the ways that individual can, with their own autonomy, their first step is the hardest. But once they take that and we can give them a welcoming, warm environment, let them know that they aren't alone anymore, I think that's the way to go.
Well, I'm glad you're in our community, and thank you for the good work you do.
Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
Please do.
I would encourage everybody to take suicide prevention training as well, and never be afraid to ask somebody, are you thinking about hurting yourself?
Well, she admitted it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having some training to back you up on how to work with individuals in that situation is helpful. It's something that we require all of our staff to do. The other thing is, and you guys are going to get an early announcement, we are launching a text line on Thursday. So now individuals can text our crisis number if they don't feel comfortable calling. And that might be able to make a difference to let them know that they can contact us anonymously, even if they just need somebody to talk to or text with. That's what the crisis line is there for. They don't have to come in, they don't have to seek services, but at least there's somebody there that they can talk to.
Thank you.
And that's something I was going to say too, because I didn't realize the breadth of services that YCC and honestly a lot of our other not-for-profit service providers in the area offer. So one thing I really appreciate about the YCC is you don't have to go there just because you're in an emergency situation in the moment and law enforcement has been called. I mean, you certainly can go there then too, or should. But they have a lot of different classes and ways to meet you where you are to understand what you're going through and then help people kind of prevent things from escalating in the other direction. So it's not like you're all in or all out kind of situation. It's more helping the person work through all the different things they have to work through as they're dealing with those situations in their families or in their community too. So they have, different kinds of groups that you can go to visit or classes you can go visit, or they also have private therapy, other kinds of things that they offer too to help people. So it doesn't always mean like you have to just go move to the shelter immediately, right, or something like that. Because I think sometimes people might be afraid of that, like, oh, I'm making this big statement by doing that action, when there could be smaller actions that they could be taking to kind of figure out what's really going on with themselves too.
That's true. Thanks, Angela. You don't have to come into shelter for our services.
I've got a question, just to clarify with the police role there. Does that new law change require that police has to only work with the victim and with you guys, or can, in Rich's circumstance, is there a opportunity for Rich or his neighborhood of support to reach out and work directly with the police so that referral could happen, or?
Yes, actually, yeah. So I'm over training the officers in our area to give that assessment. If they were to connect that individual with our services, there does not have to necessarily be a crime that's committed. Just it's kind of their gut instinct saying, okay, things are escalating. This could be a deadly situation for anybody involved, or this is just unsafe. Clearly, if someone is suffering, mentally and psychologically, that's an unsafe situation. And so, yeah, we could receive referrals that way. And, if someone is to reach out to us, just because I can't transfer information or because we have that confidentiality piece, it's not designed to be a barrier. It's designed for the safety of the victims. And it's a federal standard that we have to adhere to. So we will absolutely get creative. We'll do whatever we can to help. Our teams are always there and ready to jump in at any time.
Okay. So
Hope that answered.
yeah, kind
Yes.
of, because we,
Yes.
if we're sitting at a table and we've got a handful of partners, including neighbors and loved ones,
Yeah.
you might be able to say, well, I can't do that legally, but our partner at OPD could.
Correct.
Then we'd have to
Yes.
decide if this makes sense for this scenario, if a fair check might put
Yes.
her in more danger or something.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. The screen can happen if law enforcement's involved at any time. So you could jumpstart it that way and get a
Okay.
referral going.
Got it. Thank
Yeah.
you. And did you say a 29% increase in this year so far?
Yeah. So there's going to be a big difference just because it's now mandated. So, there's a little more consistency to the officers doing the screens.
That's on the, it's 29% on the screenings, not
Yep.
on.
Yep.
Okay.
And so far, so August to August,
Okay.
yeah, or January to August last year, this year, there's a 29% difference.
Okay. Thanks. That's better than I
Upwards.
thought. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
ask-
again so
can
much.
I ask a
Please
Over
do.
here, can I ask a quick question?
The other side of the room. Anybody over there have any questions? I apologize. Go ahead.
Did
Throw
you say
something at me.
Thursday night's activity
Yes,
is at the amphitheater
It's at
or at the
the
Union Station?
it's at the amphitheater.
Amphitheater 4:30.
We
Okay.
couldn't afford the Union Station.
Okay, on the website it says at Union Station.
Oh.
We'll fix that.
Okay.
Yeah, we better fix
Perfect.
that.
Just
Thank
wanna make
you.
sure.
Thank you for that
Yep.
clarification.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
We couldn't afford it, but thank you for
Yes.
pointing that out.
Yep.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Chair, I have a
please.
couple of comments.
We're not going to get away.
I even raised my hand.
I'm so sorry.
She did raise her hand.
I'm just
I
kidding.
can't see Bart on the other end of the dais either.
I know, right? Sorry, Bart. We've left you over there.
Well, Jay's
Hey,
up there with them.
I want to make a comment, and that is that when we look at 1 in 3 people that we know will have some sort of violence, abuse against them, that it doesn't take very many people to look around, just even on the dais, to think that one of us could have experienced some sort of domestic violence. And I really, really want to say thank you to the YCC, their staff, because they're the ones that are coming to the table for us so that we can learn about where to go and how to manipulate through this domestic violence and suicide, for that matter. And so I just want to applaud the staff for coming to the table, because I think that's the biggest thing is awareness. And once we have awareness, then we know how to activate and move. And I just really appreciate them stepping forward and just being so professional and doing some really hard work. And so thank you. I wish I was there to thank you in person, but thank you for doing what you guys do.
Thank you, Marcia. We
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, and I just want to make a note too, for anyone that might know someone or have challenges themselves, there is a suicide helpline now available. It's 988. People can text or call that just to connect someone with people that know how to connect other people to resources and talk with them when they're in that situation too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we have a consent item, the municipal boundary adjustment with Marriott-Slaterville City. It's a corrected ordinance.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt the item listed under common consent.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Nadolski, a second by Councilmember Heyer to adopt the consent item. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
I'm so
It's a roll
sorry.
call.
Because it is an ordinance, we have to do a roll call. I'm so
Oh.
sorry. Jumped the gun on that one.
Councilmember Blair,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you. Okay, so now we have the pleasure of hearing from Barton Brierly, our planning manager. He's going to talk with us through a proposed zone text amendment, use and development standards in M1 and M2 zones.
Hey, good evening, Chair Chaburka and City Councilors. So tonight we're going to talk about zoning, but really we're talking about economic sustainability. How can we make sure that Ogden over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years is still economically sustainable for our businesses, for our employees, for our citizens, and for those who provide services to all of the above? We did a similar analysis when we did the Make Ogden Downtown Plan. If you recall that plan, we looked at if we kept doing what we were doing, would it be sustainable? And it was clear in that analysis that we wouldn't be. Ogden's just not a community where we're growing. We can't go out and add land and add value that way. So it became apparent that we needed to make very judicious use of the land that we have and really maximize the value, maximize the job, and maximize the economic output of the land we have. The same sort of analysis comes into play when we look at what's happening in our industrial zones. We don't have more industrial land. We're not creating more. And so we have to make judicious use of the land we have. It is a limited supply and it is a shrinking supply. So the questions are, how can we maximize the value, maximize the outputs, maximize the jobs of that land? So for the process tonight, just to let you know, we'd like to do is give a staff report and have you receive public input, and then we have outlined individual decisions on particular items. If we look at what's happening with industrial land and construction in the area, the economic opportunities have been in the manufacturing and industrial sectors. The chart shows this is for the Weber and Davis County, the amount of industrial construction that's happened over the last decade. You can see a very strong growth in those sectors. Also, the line is the vacancy rates. And you can see the vacancy rates have been consistently going down. That's showing that there's even more need for additional industrial development. EDC Utah, who works to attract businesses to the state, the majority of the businesses that they're working on active projects are manufacturing jobs. And why is it important? You can see the growth of manufacturing jobs in the Ogden Clearfield area over the last 5 years. Manufacturing is far out past the other sectors. And if we look at just like the BDO, 4 years ago, we had about 400 acres available there. Now we're down to about 87. So you can see the shrinking land supply and the increased demand for industrial development. And if you look at the wages, just the typical manufacturing job is significantly higher wages than other jobs in the sector. And this shows the economic impacts of manufacturing jobs. The red are the direct impacts as far as jobs and earnings and gross domestic product. The gray is all the indirect and induced impacts. That's if you created a industrial job or manufacturing job. You're also creating a construction job for the facility. You're creating construction jobs for the houses that the workers will do. You're creating retail jobs for the places they'll go eat and shop. And so there's all these spin-off effects of one manufacturing job. Just in the Weber-Clearfield area, one manufacturing job is expected to create 0.92 jobs in the Weber-Clearfield area. And if you look statewide, it's like 2.9 or 1.9 additional jobs, and then nationwide it's like 2.3 additional jobs. So this is why we have our key industries of things that we are attracting, focusing on attracting jobs in the manufacturing sector that are high paying and add a lot to the community. Areas like aerospace and defense, outdoor products, life science, advanced materials, and manufacturing. So the question was asked is, are the uses that we're allowing in the M1, M2 really maximizing that value to Ogden? So where are the M1 and M2 zones? They're largely on the west side of the community, adjacent to the railroad tracks and lands that are west of the freeway. Just to kind of zoom in on it, there is a place that's zoned M2 where the fairgrounds are. There are a couple little pockets of M1 along Wall Avenue. There's a large area south of 12th Street that's zoned both M1 and M2. And the largest part is along the railroad and the freeway, where there's a significant amount of M2 and M1 land. There's quite a bit of land. The amount of vacant land is limited. You see a lot of vacant land, but a lot of that's railroad land or freeway land. But it is a finite supply. The purposes of these zones, the M1 zone, the purpose is to provide a diversified employment base. So one of the primary purposes is to provide employment. The M2 zone is for a broad mix of industry and for those that are more intensive. So the benefits of having these, they provide places for businesses to operate that enhance the local economy. And again, manufacturing businesses have the greatest multiplier effects that benefit the whole community. They provide employment for local residents. They generate tax revenue, both in property and sales tax, to support the community. Many industrial businesses help other local businesses. You might have one that supplies parts for another business. And some provide services for local residents. So if we look at, as far as employment, which sectors provide the most employment? Manufacturing typically has the highest. Warehousing, wholesale trade have the next most. Things like junk and salvage yards and personal storage have very low employees per acre. If you look at the property tax values, again, outdoor storage, junkyards, and outdoor industrial have the lowest taxable value. So we looked at things like junk and salvage yards and impound lots where you're consuming a lot of land with vehicles and other materials. And I was really surprised how many we have. There's over 20 of them, and they take calculated about 87 acres, so it's or 89 acres, so it's more land than we have available in BDO now. And these have limited employment. They have a relatively low taxable value. And then there is the potential for environmental impacts. Now, I want to say, just to be clear, there are very responsible operators there. I know our code enforcement visited one, and they were just amazed at how squeaky clean the facility was. So there are providers that do a very good job. So the proposed amendment would prohibit new yards. It would not affect any existing yards. So the ones that are in operation now can continue. But again, looking at those, these have very low property tax value. They do generate sales tax. Every part you sell that you're parting off, you pay sales tax for that. So they do generate sales tax. It's relatively low to other uses, but they do provide sales tax. They do provide employment. Again, it's quite low compared to other ones. And these are some of the environmental concerns. It's usually what comes off a vehicle or what comes off whatever you're storing. If it's not treated properly, can cause a lot of damage to the environment that can last a long time. And again, there are operators who operate very responsibly, are very careful, and don't have create these problems. We do have operators that do, and I know our staff has spent quite a bit of time dealing with some users that have not been responsible, and it's taken quite a bit of staff time and then a lot of clear environmental issues with what some of those operators are doing. So there are some that are not responsible. So that's why we're recommending that we don't allow new storage yards. It's not that this is not a not in your backyard thing. It's our backyard's full. We have a lot of them, and the land simply could be used for better uses than more storage yards. This also applies to towing yards and auto repair yards. I think any auto repair shop, you may be working on 15, 20 vehicles at once. You need a place to store it, but you don't need 2 acres to store it. Towing yards, you need some land to store them there, but again, we want to limit those as a less productive use of land. The next thing we looked at is personal storage. That's your mini storage or self-storage facilities. They do provide a service to local residents. I've used them. I've enjoyed having them. They serve a purpose, and I think we have a lot of people in the community that do use them. They are a use that has very low employment. And for a zone where the primary purpose is to provide employment, it's not serving that purpose very well. They do have a modest property tax value. And then we looked at what's out there. Currently, there's about 15 personal storage facilities in Ogden. It's roughly 11 square feet for each of us. Market studies say the market's around 10 to 13 square feet per capita. So looks like we have what we need for the population to serve. I know one of the questions the council asked was, are these facilities full or do they have space? I was able to contact 5 of them. All 5 of them had quite a bit of space available. Also asked, what do other communities do? Other communities have these storage facilities too. So we're not the only one that has them. Some communities have more. I know just kind of per capita wise, Marriott-Slater Far West has the most because they have 3 and they're a small community, and like Riverdale only has 1. So relatively speaking, they're low. So we're somewhere in the middle of that.
Barton?
Yes?
Just to make sure, when you said they have 3, you mean 3 facilities?
Yes.
Not, and I don't, 3 units per resident or anything like that. That's not what you're talking
Right, right. I didn't get down to just how much they each have.
about. Okay.
Yeah, how many.
Yep, you're just saying a smaller community has 3, Riverdale has 1 storage unit for their residents, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So we initially looked at, if these uses are not providing much employment, we have enough to serve our residences, and the land could be better used for other uses that generate more employment and more the spin-off effects to our economy. Perhaps we should prohibit new ones. And then we looked at, instead of doing that, perhaps we could look at some areas where we could. For one, like in our downtown, we have storage units. That's really not the best use of land. It's really a pretty poor use of land. We'd like to have those storage units move out to other areas. And so we provided that in the ordinance that if you were going to buy that facility and you wanted to put a new facility in an industrial zone, that we'd allow it actually in a 2-to-1 ratio. So you could put twice as much as you removed. If you had an existing facility and you had a little space that you needed to infill, we'd allow that. This idea of upper floor storage, that more facilities now are doing multi-level facilities, and there's some that can then use the ground floor for other uses. They might be businesses or storefronts, and then the upper floors could be used for storage. I think that would be a good use of land. And so we looked at these provisions, and this is just a rough guess that with these provisions, we think that you could provide about 250,000 square feet of additional personal storage, which serve about 25,000 more people. So, but even then we said, okay, what if we just keep growing and we need more? There's a provision that if population growth increases, that we could allow more. The next area we looked at is athletic facilities. Athletic facilities are permitted in the manufacturing zones. A lot of users like to go there for cheap rents and high ceilings, and so it's an attractive site for them. The biggest issues are, one, they use up space that other businesses can use. I know I talked to our economic development folks and say, if they're trying to find a space for a business to come into the community, and that space is being used for an athletic facility, that business is just not practically going to look at that space. They're going to look at others. So it's a matter of supply and demand. I did mention potential conflicts when you have families or others coming for an activity, and you have forklifts and trucks coming in. And really, these are better suited for commercial zones that are really set up to accommodate those sort of residents and customer. I know so the proposal is to limit recreational facilities to only those that are more vehicle related, things that might generate some noise. If you had like a indoor BMX track or something like that, or indoor motorized track, but otherwise prohibit them. New ones, existing ones could remain. I know the council was interested in attracting some athletic facilities, and we have several. This is, I think, the kind of thing that the council is looking at. We have an indoor soccer facility here, which is sort of a warehouse type building, but it's inside. It's a indoor soccer facility, and the council thought about this would provide some benefits of people coming into the community to use it, maybe sports teams, and attract economic development in the community that way. So this particular one is in a commercial zone. This is another facility that's in a commercial zone. This one's near the mall. It's, malls are changing, and this was a good use of some space in the mall. This is another former grocery store that an athletic facility moved into. Here's yet another one. Here's some more vacant commercial space. And then we looked at, is there vacant land in commercial zones? And generally speaking, we're not seeing a great deal of demand for additional commercial development, commercial land development, other than residential. That's primarily what you're seeing in commercial zones, just because of the change to e-commerce, and you get your food on Uber Eats and things like that, and your groceries, or you need something, you buy it online. So we've looked and we found really a number of spaces that could be used if somebody wanted to come in and build an athletic facility. Sort of the orange highlighted ones there. Here's another area with orange highlighted, and didn't go through all the commercial zones, but we're fairly confident that if somebody came in and wanted to build a new indoor batting cage or stuff like that, that there would be land that could accommodate that.
I think just before we move
Yes.
on from that, I was more curious how many of these kinds of facilities we have currently in the M1, M2. Were you able to find any that were already there?
I found one. That's what I could find. It's a facility that has a bunch of tenant spaces, and it's kind of interesting. You have auto repair, a gym, and more auto storage. So it's just one of the tenant spaces that they took up. Yeah, I was able to find one. There's undoubtedly more, and we actually did get an application in just the other day for one, and we had to say, with the pending ordinance, you have to wait on it. So. We also looked on the development standards. Are these industrial areas, are they being used efficiently as possible? Are they providing lasting value? And can we make better use of those lands? So one of the things we have is a impervious coverage standard. So this is common among communities to have this standard, and it's usually related to stormwater, not covering the entire lot with hard surface so that we don't overload the stormwater systems. Stormwater technology has advanced quite a bit, and so you can handle the stormwater other ways. You can actually handle it under a parking lot now. A lot of businesses do that. And so there isn't the real need for the impervious coverage standard, so we'd recommend eliminating that. We have, in the M1 zone, we have a 20-foot rear yard setback. This setback doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. We usually have a rear setback in a residential zone, so you have a backyard to play in. The M1, that back space just ends up usually being kind of storage or things like that. And on diagrams like this where, well, what's the back? Let's see. You have wall that's the front, so this makes this the back, and the sides are 0. So it doesn't really maximize the use of the property. Maximum heights, we actually don't have a maximum height. Yes.
So that setbacks in these zones, that is just within the zone. So if it has a zone border, there still will be a setback, I
Yes,
assume.
there would be.
Okay.
Yeah, there'd be 20-foot setback if it's next to a
Adjacent to
residential
the-
or an open space zone.
commercial, right?
Not commercial. You
Not
could actually
commercial?
rewrite it commercial.
Just residential?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So there's no maximum height in the M2 zone, which we could possibly regret if we got something in. So our proposal is to limit it to 90-foot maximum height, which is pretty generous. And if we got a project in that we really wanted, we could consider a zone change for that. The buffers, there is that setback between a manufacturing use and a residential zone, but it doesn't really say what needs to go in there. And often that ends up just being storage and junk, and that's where you have your trucks coming in and out. So the proposal is to create a real buffer where you have a wall, you have no openings, you have landscaping, trees in between. We also looked at just the durability of buildings. How long are these buildings going to last? Do they provide lasting value to the community? On the upper left, you see a tilt-up concrete building, and really no one knows how long tilt-up concrete buildings last, because the ones that when they first invented them about 70 years ago, they're still in operation. So those are great. Metal buildings, they tend to decay. And I know, yes, one of the questions you had to look at other communities. There's a lot of communities around us that don't allow metal buildings in industrial areas. What we found is what really wears out is the base, where you have the metal coming to the ground. That's where cars hit it. That's where snow loads hit it. Those are where the problems is. This is in the BDO, where you have this little concrete base, and you can see these buildings have aged pretty well. You think about a car backing into it, it's going to hit the concrete instead of the building, and that helps the durability of the buildings. So and looking at more metal buildings than not do this sort of a concrete or block base. So it's our recommendation that we make that a requirement. We also looked at just how the area looks. And we talked to our economic development folks. They're trying to bring businesses into the community. They're trying to attract business. And we talked to them and said, do looks matter? And they say, yeah. If you want to go, you're going to have your employees there. You're going to basically live your business there. Having an attractive area is attractive, and then that it attracts business to the area. So just things like landscaping. This is a site, kind of a typical site with no landscaping. This is one with pretty minimal landscaping, but it makes a big difference. The landscaping hides a lot of sins. So we're not actually proposing adding any landscaping requirements. There is a proposal that when you expand a facility, then you don't have landscaping, that you'll be required to put some in proportionate to what you are expanding. We also looked at architecture. And again, this is something our economic development folks that are trying to attract businesses, that are showing people around, and said, yeah, this is important. If you had something like that, just kind of the clients you'll get, the value, the jobs you'll get, if you can bump it up a little bit, it'll be more attractive to businesses. So what we did was we wanted to set a bar, and we didn't want to set the bar too high. We wanted a fairly low bar. This isn't 25th Street. It's not Washington that we're trying to make it something that everyone in the world is going to come and take pictures of, but something that at least a business is going to go in there and feel comfortable in the area. So we made a list of 11 things that you could do, and we said pick 3 of these. So give the builder a lot of choice on what they do, not dictate one thing. And some of those things would be just like having two materials on the building. This little covered entry just makes that building a lot more attractive. The little brick on there, we'd say that would be 3 elements and that would qualify. Here's another one where they just incorporate some decorative shapes into the block. They have a little bit of an overhang. They have some split face box. This would be 3 things, and this would meet the standards. Here's an existing building that, again, that covered entry adds a lot. That wainscoting adds a lot. And just the fact that the roll-up doors are on the side or the back, we'd say that would be 3 things, and that would qualify. Here's,
So can I ask about
Yes.
the roll-up doors then?
Yeah.
So you're not proposing that it's required that they have their roll-up doors on the sides? You're just saying that's one of the items that they could pick?
yes, right, exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Here's another one with a little bit of an entry feature, some bricks, a couple materials. This would meet it. Here's a little different style where it's got a lot of glass in the front. There's no parking in front. There's no roll-up doors. This would meet those 3 standards. And here's one that's fairly plain Jane, but still, you don't have that roll-up door in front. You have a couple of materials. There's not parking right in front of the building, so this would meet those 3. So we feel like this would be a fairly low bar that would not be too difficult to meet, but would still enhance the attractiveness of the industrial areas. And again, I mentioned standards that for sites where if you want to do an expansion and your existing streetscape looks like that, over time you would, if you did an expansion, that you add some of those features. So the Planning Commission has recommended that you adopt the proposed amendments. And again, we recommend that you receive public input, and then we've divided it up into some separate ordinances so you can consider these items separately. That closes my report for now.
I'm sure we have a couple questions up here. I have a couple anyway, and I'm not sure if Councilmember White would have any questions for you before we take public input. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Yeah.
What evidence, I know you've brought this up in the work session, that if we eliminate these uses, the low of employment uses, that we can fill all this stuff up with better uses. What evidence do we have that if we don't allow these, we will get those?
Well, there's no guarantees in life, but the fact that there is quite a bit of trend towards this, there are active projects out there, that we have filled up a lot of land. And so it's all trending towards that being a very attractive area for that. So it's not going to happen all overnight, but the studies all show that that's a big growth sector.
The other question I have that kind of becomes a little bit of a philosophical thing, and maybe there's no answer for it, but these properties are all privately owned that we're talking about. And people buy property for a purpose. They didn't buy it just because they wanted to have a chunk of property. They wanted to do something with it. And while we do have land use authority, that's I think it's a good thing. I don't think we ought to quit doing that. It does tend to concern me if we're just telling somebody that they can't do what they intended to do, that has a legal use and the market demand. Those are the things that I think is how do we balance that kind of a thing, and I just throw that out for everybody's own enlightenment, because I don't think there is an answer. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do think that's a thing. That's going to weigh into this for me, at least.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. This does limit, of those list of 50, 60 uses that somebody could do on a property, this would limit it 2 or 3 of those that they could do.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit of a bird in the hand, it's worth 2 in the bush. I mean, we are asking these property owners, yes, you could do this today, but, why don't you hold off and do another tomorrow? I used an example in the work session. There was a piece of property where somebody wanted to come and add a new salvage yard there. And we said no, because of the pending ordinance, you can't now. And it was like the next day, someone who wanted to do a manufacturing operation say, hey, can I buy this? If I bought this, could I do it there? And we said yes. So there are birds in the bush. Yes.
Okay.
And there is value to the property owners.
Well, that's kind of what I've tried to weigh out. Okay, if we have some of these higher uses, technically it should make the property worth more to whoever does own it, and therefore it would compensate them for the limiting use that we imposed on them.
Yes.
But it is all kind of, like you said, there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
I kind of have a question to follow up on that, just because it's kind of connected, if that's okay. So my understanding was that we filed the pending ordinance because we were getting a lot of applications for certain kind of use. So I guess, that's a concern of mine that kind of piggybacks on what you're saying, because people have purchased the property and want to do a certain kind of use. And then, we kind of go back and forth in this conversation around what the market demands. People aren't going to try to build another storage unit thing if they're not going to make some kind of profit off of it or be able to use it that way. So I guess for me, how many people were applying to do certain things when we decided to do the pending ordinance? Because that would make a difference to me too, I think. We have 5, 10, I don't know how many that took to get the pending ordinance filed.
Yeah, so we don't have any applications. We didn't actually get any applications. We had 2 storage unit projects approved, and I think they're both under construction right now. We had 3 inquiries about doing them. 2 are people who were looking at purchasing a property in order to put storage units on them. Another one's existing property owners owned the property for years, and we've worked with them, and they've got a storage facility, and this would be an infill, and they would qualify under that infill. So there's that. I know there was one gentleman who wanted to do a sort of flex industrial space, and we told him that he would need to hold off. And turns out, as we've crafted the ordinance, other than the design standards, this wouldn't limit them. And we did have the one inquiry, again, about purchasing a property to do the junk and salvage yards.
Okay, that's helpful. Beth, I know you had some questions.
So to follow up on that, were those rent or storage units available? Were those listed in where you put them, where you had some highlighted on a map and said how many we had? Were those included in that number?
No.
Those are in addition to?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then maybe in my mind, there's a difference between a junkyard and a salvage yard. Is it in the ordinance? Are they lumped together as one thing, or are those 2 different uses?
There are some terminology differences in them. Yeah, and basically a salvage yard, you're selling the things
Okay.
there, where a junk, you're not necessarily, they
Just
may stay
storing it.
there forever,
Okay.
but the zoning standards are the same for either.
Okay. And then just curious, we have some recycling places like Bloom Recycling. Is this affected at all based on what we're doing today?
Yeah, we do have like some concrete recyclers. This would prohibit or building construction recyclers. This would not allow those either.
Okay.
Any new ones, the existing ones can stay.
Okay. Yeah, and that was the other question.
I've
Was
got another follow-up question. to
everything
yours.
everything that
Perfect,
we
yeah.
everything that's in place right now is able to continue to
Yes.
stay.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
My follow-up question about the storage facilities, I know that you mentioned a couple times in the different times we've talked about this, that we would be able to increase the number of storage units as growth happens. And how do you plan to monitor when that will be okay? Is it just like, oh, somebody just comes in a year and is like, I want to apply because I think our population has grown, or how will you monitor that?
So the way we propose in the ordinance is we would do an analysis after each decennial census. So basically, once every 10 years, we would look at it and we'd do an evaluation of the square footage of storage facilities fell below 10 square feet per capita, then we would open it up to allow more.
That sounds good. And how would you trigger that? I guess I just don't know how that works in processes. Do you have a big list of things that you go down every 10 years that you have to reevaluate? I'm just not sure how that works.
Yeah, my guess is it'd be triggered because we would have people asking to do it, and then we would do the analysis based on that.
So that would be a community effort. It wouldn't be something that your department would monitor.
Well, the community effort would make sure we didn't forget to do it.
I'm not confident in that, but
Okay.
okay.
I have one other question
Okay.
that I forgot. The U-Haul storage facility down on Wall, would that type of facility, would that work with the new what we're proposing with these new changes? It looks like I think it has 2 floors. There's some they sell moving equipment boxes and that kind of stuff on the main floor, and then it looks like there's some other. I haven't been in there, but
Yeah.
I've been in there, yeah.
Is
That's what
that
it's
that kind of what we're proposing? I mean, I understand trying to bring in retail on the floor or on a main level and then something on, but would that type of facility meet these requirements?
They would have to have more ground floor other uses.
Okay.
But potentially you could. But
Okay.
yeah, if they did a facility like that but had more of the ground floor as maybe little spaces that a contractor could rent out and then did the upper floor, then yes, we would.
And that was my question. Is there a certain percentage of the main floor or a certain percentage of the total square footage of the property that needs to be retail or commercial?
The proposal is that the ground floor could
The whole
not be
ground floor.
storage.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Discussion? Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead and go with public input. Thank you so much, Barton. Okay, so for this public input session, you would come to the podium and state your name for the record, and we'd only be talking about these development standards in M1 and M2 zones. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. And if you're online on the Zoom meeting, you can raise your hand. I don't know if we have any phone numbers on there. I can't see it. So is it *9 or *6? *9. So if you're on the phone on the Zoom meeting, you can select *9 to raise your hand as well. If you have comments here, please step up. Welcome.
Thank you. I was waiting for somebody else to go first, but I'll start it off. Good evening, Council. Stephen Van Wagner. I candidate for Ogden City Council District 4. Thank you, Ben, for starting the time. Glenn, excellent work on your presentation earlier in the work session. That was a lot of complication that you made simple, and I was following along, so thank you. And Barton, thank you for your presentation here this evening and in previous work sessions to help us catch up and follow along. I'm going to ask you all to do something, and that is just strike this down altogether. Strike it down altogether. This is an anti-property rights movement. This is infringing on property rights of people that have not only owned property, but as Rich has said, Councilman Heyer said, they've purchased property with intent. We don't have the demand, and we have a bunch of open-ended answers to questions that you've all been asking. Where is the demand factor to replace the current business and the operations that we currently have? And is there a demand factor there? I have paid attention to manufacturing here in Utah for over 20 years. Let's talk manufacturing. I have owned storage units. I have developed land in M1 and M2 zone here in Ogden. And so if you want to have a deep, open discussion on any of these things, let's do it. When we talk about the auto dismantlers, understand that our old school style of auto dismantlers, auto wreckers, junkyards, whatever we wanted to call them, they didn't have the same standards of EPA that they do today. Those are all considered Sector M businesses. They are closely monitored. Every engine, every transmission, they're drained of the fluids. We don't have the leaks, the stuff that we used to have, the contaminations on the lands. If you want to do something environmentally along the rivers, apply an overlay simply along the rivers to protect our environmental resources. To go in that total M1, M2 zone, businesses that you are wanting to shut down support our economy. Storage, at the rate that we're building apartments here in Ogden, we might want to hold off on not allowing more storage to be built, especially if it's a 10-year census review, because we're building apartments at a faster rate. Those folks are going to need that service. They're also, because we're not giving them enough parking spaces, where they're going to park their ski-doo, their boat, their extra car. They're going to need this additional, we're calling it junk. One man's junk is another man's treasure. And so for us to be trying to limit property rights, limit what people can have, what businesses they can have, that's up to the property owner to accept the rent and the best deal at the time. And that's not something we should throw restrictions on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hello.
My name's Vern Perry, and I have to apologize if I touch on some things I'm real hard of hearing, and I only caught about a third of it. But in his report, he's talking about these personal storage units not giving you any income other than the tax, property tax. Well, what kind of a drain on the city water, fire, on the resources of the city is there? It's all property tax. It's all given to you. I have 3 or 4 out by my property, and I'm not real thrilled to have them, but they're running 80 to 90% full, which means that there is there's a need for them. I mean, people, like he said, one man's junk is another man's treasure. You start putting these restrictions on the auto repair places and the fitness places and that. If they weren't making money, they wouldn't be in business. They wouldn't have come up with the dollars to build the building and do the land. So you're going to you basically start putting enough restrictions that you're going to put small people out of business. The other thing is, I don't know when Ogden City became an architectural firm, trying to tell people the one building that he was pointing out with the steel down to the bottom, that's been there since since Ogden City's first industrial park. That was the old Dr. Pepper place. Well, that's what? 50, 60 years ago. You got a concrete building, you're going to have the same thing. If the owner doesn't want to do the maintenance, it's just going to start to deteriorate. And Ogden City he wants all these big businesses like in the BDO, all them great big warehouses. Where's the income from them? They're just an oversized personal storage. And how many of them in the last year, the companies have gone broke? Put 50, 60, 100, 200 people out of work. So we need to stay with the bread and butter and not go after these pie in the sky ideas. Because you get a big company big rewards comes with big losses. And then so,
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is James. I live in the M1 zoning, and everything I got in my place I do use. Like the snowplow I got in my front yard, because Ogden City don't go down our road and plow the road, so I got to do it. So everything that's there I use, and I like to know why they want to change the zoning. If you guys could support me on that one, I will, because I've been M1 zoning since I've been a child, and I lived in that neighborhood. Like this other lady talked about crime, the death and everything. I could leave my house, I could leave my keys in my car, I could leave my house unlocked, nobody bothers it. So I'd like to know why they want to change it from the M1 zoning to whatever they want to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up. Come on up. Coming from all directions. Whoever gets there first. No, I'm kidding. You don't have to raise. Yeah, you don't have to raise.
Hello, Council. I'm Brian Jones. So I don't want to upset the apple cart, but my issue is I am a property owner in this area. And I've kind of have a unique situation because a big share of my property is in West Haven, and an acre or acre and a half is in the city. So there's two separate tax ID numbers, but they connect. And right now, we'd like to do something really great with the property. But Ogden City nor West Haven have ever ran sewer to this property. So with what I'm hearing in this meeting tonight, you guys are basically restricting or saying we just can't do it, the kind of business that we really could use our property for without having a sewer. Because right now we've got a septic system that works just fine, but that's limited use. We can't expand. We couldn't do, office condos. We could do storage units. It'd be fantastic where you don't have to have sewer. But you're saying we can't do storage units. So, and this is a big investment in this piece of property. And when you have somebody saying, hey, I'm all for beautifying the corridor, make everything, I'm all for that. But I want to be able to use the property wisely, make a good choice on how we use the property. And how do we do that if pretty much the majority of the options that I have right now are being taken away from us with the sewer issue? I'd love for Ogden City to say, hey, you know what, don't worry about it. We'll come and run sewer to you, and then you can do whatever you want. Then you can do a really great business. But I don't hear that happening.
Thank you. Are y'all finished? You just don't want to use up your 3 minutes.
Well, that's about, yeah, that's pretty much all I have, but okay.
Great, thank you so much. Well, and I should just mention, if you haven't been here before, we usually will take all the public comments or the input, and then we'll try to respond with if there's any questions or things that we respond to as well. So, but we just want to make sure you get your whole 3 minutes. So we'll take all the public input first.
Thank you, that's all I have.
No problem. Next up.
Chair, just while he's coming up,
Yeah.
we talked a little bit last week about swatching between online and that, just to kind of mix it up a little. Just thought I'd throw that back
Oh,
out.
sure.
So,
Go ahead.
My name is Sam Hunter. I'm a property owner here in Ogden, and I'm a small business owner and building a shop here. And it looks like this thing's partitioned in a couple different potential votes, from land use to zoning standards and land standards. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, right now it's all one.
Oh, it's
but
all one.
Because of the conversations that we've had, we've divvied it up. But I'll
Okay.
let you finish your comment so that you have your whole time.
Oh, my comment's short.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I really like the land standard uses where they're eliminating some of the setbacks or reducing some of those setbacks, and the non-permeable ground things where we can build out. It does seem like a bit of a conflict of interest between non-permeable ground and the landscaping. I would love to understand how that works a little more, because you're trying to bring in landscaping and make them look good with non-permeable ground, which is usually just hardscape, right? Like parking lots. So I'd love to understand that a little bit more. This is not the place for that. But if this is partitioned out, I would definitely be in very much agreement with the fact that the new setbacks and things and those standards that they've proposed, and putting drainage under properties and things like that. That's actually really great. Thank you.
Thank you. And did you say your name? I just can't remember since we did
Is
that.
we good?
Thank you. I get distracted. Okay, well, Eric, will that work for you to go back and forth? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, so we'll go online with Hisato. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, Hisato, Ogden resident. I definitely see both sides of this issue, and I don't have a real strong statement to make one way or the other on that. I see the need to take tax burden off, people's homes and that sort of thing, by having more profitable to the city's revenue businesses than some of these uses. But I also see the property rights side. I do want to say one thing I did not hear when discussing making the place more attractive to businesses. I have a shop out here in the sort of industrial area, and there are times in the evening where I literally have to put my shirt over my mouth because of the gag reflex from what's coming out of the dog food plant, from what I understand. And I've never seen that brought up as, making Ogden maybe smell a little bit better to attract better business. So just something to think about. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, next person here in the room.
My name's Toby Molesky. I'm a property owner here in Ogden. Madam Chair, members of the council member, thanks for all that you do. I know it's a thankless job and people don't appreciate it, what you do and all the time and effort you put into the job that you serve the people here. I'm going to skip over a lot of the things because they've already been said already, especially by candidate Van Wagner. He hit on a lot of them right on the money. One of the things I want to go back to is on the planning commissioner, Commissioner Aberg indicating he was concerned about limiting uses on properties that people have already purchased and about limiting small businesses. And this goes to what Councilman Heyer had mentioned. It's about their value. Well, value is determined by location, location, location. Wall, 20th, 12th, 31st Street, those are big locations. Gibson, West 17th, 32nd Street over there in the whole, I call it the whole north of the airport, not big locations. Commissioners.
Hey, you're talking about my district now, so be careful.
No,
I
know.
I'm kidding.
It's limited, like on West 17th Street, there's a section, there's no sewer. So there's industrial zone, but no sewer. So, okay, I mean, I think Mr. Jones mentioned that same thing as well. Commissioner Southwick indicated he felt the city had sufficient regulation already in the industrial zones, and the proposal did not support small businesses, and I happen to agree with him on that. The junk yards, the salvage yards, as Councilman Blair mentioned, I'd like to see the actual definition before we call one the other and the other the other. But storage units, dance studios, tow yards, auto body, and auto repair shops, that's the free market. I don't know why we're not recognizing that, because if some of these other businesses wanted to come in and establish their business there, they would have bought the property, not the other ones we're trying to limit. So with that being said, depending on your guys' discussion, I'll be happy to email some other comments later, but I don't want to take up any more time because I notice you've got some other folks up there wanting to speak. So thank you very much for your help.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we'll go online with Zach Kitchen.
All right. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Can you may want to speak up just a little bit. We can barely hear you.
All right. Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. So the way I feel, a property owner in Ogden, and we've got some manufacturing facilities there as well. It's similar to the other comments that have been made in that, as a property owner, like to have the ability and freedom to do, the less restrictions that I have, the better, kind of. I do like the, less setbacks and things like that so that we can better utilize the space that we have because as it's been stated, the space is limited. Most of the reason that I wanted to comment was just to get some questions answered. So don't need to use my time. So I don't know if I wait till the end to ask those, but just a couple questions just to clarify these building, the pick 3 of the building standards. That's just being applied to new builds. Is that correct? And that doesn't impact us currently.
Yeah, that's my understanding, unless you want to expand.
Okay, if you want to expand. And the other 2 questions I have is just, where did those 11 items come from? Was there research behind these 11 things make a good property? And then the last thing is we have kind of a specific circumstance, don't want to take anyone else's time. So if we have questions about our specific circumstance, do we just email them to the city council at ogdencity.com email address, or what's the best way to bring that up in maybe a longer form discussion?
Yeah, you can definitely
about
email.
the specific
Yeah,
issue.
you can email us, or you can contact Barton Brierley in the planning department as well.
Okay.
And we'll find out more about the 11 things in a moment after everybody's done talking.
Thank you.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Okay, anyone else here in the room?
Good evening, Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. There's some good stuff here, and then there's some things that maybe need some real thought. So let's talk about the good things first. I think it's great to limit a setback. I think it's great that we should put some height restrictions on it. Those seem like really reasonable and sound things. I love the, if you're going to expand, pick 3 of these things that has some flexibility and it allows people to pick the things that are going to benefit their business and their use first. I think that's all really great stuff, and I do believe that we should be looking at this, but from an administration standpoint, we're missing a couple of things with regards to if we're going to say no more new, where is the sunset clause? Are those uses of storage and wrecking yards and things like that, are those going to continue on in perpetuity forever and ever, and they're just going to sell it like a liquor license and it will never change? Or are you really saying we don't want these uses in this particular place and we're going to give you 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, and then that usage is over? And I think we're really, I know that the knee-jerk response of we don't want storage downtown, but if we're really moving towards density and we're planning for density, I was born and raised in Chicago. I know what real density is like, and I'm telling you those storage facilities are necessary right in the downtown area. So that's a question. And other cities have managed this by putting a sunset law on and saying everything else, conditional use permit. And then you don't have to worry about a 10-year survey. It's like if somebody wants to build it, if the market is really driving things and they see a use, they'll invest a few $100s or a few $1,000s to go through the process and petition for it, rather than giving the burden to staff and having to wait 10 years to see whether or not it's going to happen. I agree with a lot of people here that this is a big property rights thing. And I understand that sometimes we do have to limit it for the overall good, but I am really concerned about the whole sports facilities thing because those bring social value to the community. Neptune skate rink, what does that do for kids? It gives them a place to go, a place to be, a place to find. Tumbling cheer center, pickleball, indoor soccer, Foley's MMA. I mean, those are places that are small businesses, and it feels like you're taking this ecosystem and you're picking winners and losers, and you're going to bet on the big guys as opposed to the little guys, as opposed to really doubling down and doing economic gardening and enhancing our small local businesses that are here. You're going to hamstring them. So some of these things are great. I think it's a great conversation, but I think it requires
Thank
more
you.
conversation.
Okay, we'll go online with Alex.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to talk. I'd just like to voice my concerns with the ordinance proposal on these automotive-related businesses, mainly new licenses for junkyards and recycling centers in Ogden. To reinforce kind of a previous concern, I was recently working towards purchasing a property in Ogden, and I did put that on hold because they would not issue any new licenses. The automotive industry, recycling industry, is responsible for recycling and repurposing over 4 million vehicles annually, and they generate $32 billion in sales nationally. The Planning Commission in their report state that, in their opinion, these businesses are an environmental hazard, occupy too much space, generate low property tax, and are of low value to the people of Ogden. What they don't focus on is that these businesses have been essential in filling the gap left in the supply chain issues for precious metals and part shortages affecting the automotive industry over the last few years with COVID and whatnot, or how they've been adapting to change over the past decades. Ogden has maybe 3 pick and pull junkyards. These are considered a self-service where customers are able to walk the lot, look for parts. These facilities are generally like dealing with cars that are 10 years and older. They provide a great option for DIYers to find their own parts, and it's a really affordable way for somebody to repair their vehicle. The second style of junkyard, which I don't believe any are actually in Ogden, is a full service yard who tests quality checks, removes and inventories parts in warehouse and yard settings, so that they're readily available for body shops, insurance companies, and repair shops. Over the years, this style of business has been able to adapt to the stricter requirements of cities similar to Ogden who don't want cars taking up acres of space. They can operate on smaller plots of land and are sometimes entirely contained inside a warehouse. Warehouse space, just like the Planning Commission themselves references in their report, is having a 3 to 5 times higher property tax value than the outdoor storage. How do I know this? Because I am one of these hundreds of junkyards, quote unquote, that have taken the approach to completing this type of business almost entirely indoor settings. In warehouses, and it addresses almost every single one of the planning board's concerns. These operations are contained indoors, cutting down on noise and environmental contamination. It requires mainly warehouse space for part storage. I maintain an exterior appearance that is almost no different than any automotive repair shop or a contractor or even a distribution center. We ship thousands of parts a year throughout the world, regularly have local customers and other customers drive hours to pick up parts. Automotive recycling is an essential provider for dealers, repair shops, body shops, and consumers. And with the direction that cars are going with hybrids, electrics, and more automated vehicles, recyclers and metal recyclers will be needed more than ever to repurpose these parts, batteries, and precious metals, and help get what they need. Thank you.
Okay, that made me jump. Thank you. Alex, do you mind saying your last name or saying your own name? I said Alex, but I don't know if that's your name.
It's Alex Maurer.
Okay, thank you. I forgot that part. Anyone else here?
Hello, Travis Pate, Ogden resident. I had the opportunity to attend the Planning Commission meeting when this was presented, and it was fairly unique, especially the dynamic of the individuals that possibly are not here tonight. And so I think if that report came forward, it talked about some of the limitations of storage units and then their ability to expand, and it said expand on site. But one of the owners has probably about 10 parcels, and if we did limit on site, then Weaver State would be limited to a very small portion, because if you look at their mass of parcels, it's not defined. It doesn't say adjacent property. It just says on site. And so that it's a quandary in the sense that these individuals that have a lot of smaller lots right next to each other won't be able to expand. And so that's the thing that I noticed at the planning commission meeting. The other dynamic to me is it said setbacks next to residential zones for manufacturing or commercial. And yet in April, you guys changed that ordinance for citywide that said, oh, we believe the intent, at least the way the planning commission and planning staff presented it, was for it to be R1 only. So are you going to hold to that standard for this also and say it's only if manufacturing and commercial adjacent to R1s only, and we're going to ignore our historic properties? Our largest historic properties are R3s and R2s and R3 EC and those other types of things. And so for you guys to actually vote, and you literally, it just draws the line through it, and then they changed it from manufacturing commercial next to a residential zone, because it references the Grandview Acres property. It just says residential down to an R1 zone. And so you've literally like beat up the people that need it the most, the people that are adjacent to the commercials, the people that are within that property themselves. And so I'd ask that you reconsider that one also, that you pull up April's meeting and say, no, it means next to a residential zone. If you're next to a residential zone and you're commercial manufacturing, it's 35 feet and then 1 foot for every foot you're next to the property. That you just really enact and safeguard our more vulnerable citizens, which are our older housing stock and the individuals that own that older housing stock. It kind of came across as the guise of, here's the mountain, here's Grandview Acres, here's some of these other things, but you may as well limit it to this also if the intent was residential next to open space. And then also the every 10 years prompted, we need a historic property survey. That's over 20 years old. So I'm asking that, so to speak. It shouldn't have to be prompted by the citizens. It should be on the calendar. It should be a budget issue, and it should be that type of thing. So, and then equal protection for historic properties. Anytime we come back in and start destroying things or moving things and adjusting, we have equal protection for historic properties. Thank you.
Anyone else here in the room? I don't see any other hands online. Welcome.
Good evening. John Dunkley, and I have some property down on 17th Street that I really enjoy, with the exception of the railroad. But the railroad probably costs me, on an average, $300 to $400 a week in lost wages. Not that that's a big thing as far as the council's concerned, but this gentleman over here that works for the city and has done a lot of homework on beautifying the city and to try and make things work. When you talk about 12th Street, yes, that's one kind of a street. If you're talking about 21st Street, that's one kind of a street. When you're talking 17th, where you're locked in for a minimum of 2 hours a day, and if you think I'm exaggerating, you come down and be there for a day and see how many hours you're locked in that place. I think value's important, as this gentleman right here talked about. I have the fortune of having 10 kids, okay? Some of them have married well economically. Some of them haven't married as well economically. But does that make one child less valuable than the other? Does one business, because it doesn't meet his economical standard, is it of less value than the one that meets his values? I don't think so. Not in America. And Ogden City's part of America. You know, I've heard some real logical feedback from some of you folks here today, and that needs to be taken into consideration all of the time, okay? And beauty is a very important part of life, and I'm all for helping the city become more beautiful and whatever it takes, but I'm not in the business to put in storage units. But storage units that I've been around have been they're not this attractive unless they have a lot of boats or something sitting out front of that, if that bothers that person, then it hurts them mentally only. But I haven't seen any storage units, and I have no desire to put any in. But like I say, it's like the kids. They all have value. They all have purpose in life. And I don't think it's our prerogative to restrict all those things. That's my opinion. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you. Looks like we do have one hand online. I'm so sorry, I just saw a hand pop up for Isaac Bundy.
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
I'm Isaac Bundy. I'm a property owner there in one of these zones, and we have been on the in the process of building or putting our plans together. We spent significant amounts of money in development, in plans and architectural and engineering, and the city has effectively put a hold on all new developments, whether or not we are affected directly by this change or not, for the last 6 months. I guess we're just interested in knowing when and how quickly this moratorium will end so that we can get on with our development. So that was my question. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here? Saw you getting up, Laura.
Well, I'm Laura Lewis, and I sat here and I've listened to everybody talk, and I was thinking, do I want to say something or not? There's good and bad to this, like everybody said, the way the buildings are designed. But from my own perspective, I had to use one of those take-apart facilities. I never thought I would ever be in one of those, but I found myself there looking for a rear view mirror for an older car I had. And I was very thankful they had it, and there was only one salvage yard that had the parts I needed. No matter how many we have here, there was only one that had it. And so I was very grateful that they were there. And what this sounds a lot to me is that we're taking away not only the rights, but the ability of a person. We're putting preference on what the city wants as far as their revenue per acre over the profit of the citizen, what they want to do on their property. And that is the thing that bothers me most here. I think that there's good and bad, but the fact that we are putting gain for the city over personal gain for individual citizens, and that's my issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Take your time.
Hello, my name is Rita, and I live in one of these zones that they're trying to change. I've lived in my house for, I'm going to be 65, I'd say about 60 years when I was little.
Yeah.
It's been a while. And they've always tried to push us out of our area. I mean, if they're not happy with the way the yards are and there's no grass and my brother has cars that are antique cars that he parks out in the yard. He's getting license plates for everything. They don't want those in there. They want them out. My house was built in 1950, in the 50s it was built. What happened to the grandfather law? Why are we trying to be pushed out? We live in an industrial area where there's Wadman Corporation, there is FedEx, there's UPS, there's a truck that hauls pipes and stuff back by the house. We don't complain about none of that. They just come, they do their stuff. As a matter of fact, we watch their things in case somebody comes to steal. We got numbers we can call to let these people know. But I don't want to move out of my house. I've been there for a very, very long time. I grew up in that house. The water, I'm on a fixed income. The water bill is so high, I can't afford to keep my grass perfect like the way they want it. I don't feel like I own my house. I feel like I'm renting my house from the city. And I just don't think it's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Don't see any online either. Well, we do have quite a list of questions. I've tried to scribble down a few. Did you get a few of them, Barton? First of all, maybe just to address the last person, I mean, this doesn't impact residents, these changes at all, right? That, in my understanding.
That's correct. The changes don't affect what an existing property owner does with as their existing use. So if you have a home in there, you can continue to live there. If you've established an existing business there, you can continue to run that business. This would not affect what somebody's doing legally today. It would only affect if somebody wanted to build a new building or put a new use on a new property. But
And I'm not sure, we might have to follow up because I'm not sure what the rules are for vehicles on your property if you live in the M1 but you're in a residence. That might be something we could follow up later on because I'm not sure what those rules are.
Can I ask a question on that one?
Yeah,
clarification. How about upgrades or expansions to existing businesses? Where does that fall in this?
Yeah, so an expansion, there's a provision in the code for expansion of a non-conforming use. It would have to go to the Planning Commission for an expansion of a building. It would not allow expansion of the land area use. So if you're using 4 acres for junk and salvage, you couldn't add another acre, but you could potentially add buildings with permission of the Planning Commission.
Okay. How about what if there's been an operation underway for a long time? They're due for some upgrades and maintenance and maybe some overhaul of the exterior. And where does that fall in line with this proposal?
Yeah. Maintenance is permitted under the non-conforming standards, so you can do maintenance, regular maintenance, and any sort of additions would have to be approved by the Planning Commission. But yeah, you want to paint your place, please do. You want
How about upgrades to materials used and things like that? Would an upgrade fall in the line of maintenance, or would that be subject to the new standards then because it's a change in use?
If you're expanding the footprint, the new standards would apply. If you're just fixing up your facade, no.
Okay, thank you.
I have a little bit of a follow-up on that one that Travis was asking about when we say on-site. Exactly what does that mean? Like if someone owns several different properties, is it just their adjacent property?
Well, it's the parcels that are being used for that personal storage. So if the fact that they may own another property that's not being used for personal storage, that wouldn't count. But
So they wouldn't be able to expand over that spot.
Yes. And I know the one gentleman we talked to quite a bit, he actually had 3 parcels. All 3 were actually being used for personal storage. And so he could expand on that site.
And then another follow-up, there was someone online that was asking about, and I'm not sure if their business is one of these uses, but they said that they're on hold and they can't proceed until this is resolved. Do you know that particular business?
Yes, I am. The gentleman wants to do sort of a contractor flex industrial space, and under the proposed ordinance, he would be able to do that. The only changes would be the materials and design of that. So
okay, so he has to wait because of the design standards.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not because of the business he wants to do.
Right, yeah.
Okay, just double checking. Okay, well, as far as I know, we'll have to decide by next week because then the pending ordinance goes away. So if we don't pass this, then current standards are just what it will be.
Right, yes.
I keep asking you because I'm like, this is what I understand. I want to make sure I'm right.
Yes.
Okay, good. And then the other question I had to follow up a little bit was on the business or the person that has the land that there's no sewer line to. Do you know how much land in this area is not accessed by sewer or water? I don't know if it's also water, but
I don't know exactly how much. There are quite a few holes where there is not sewer in there. I know that the one gentleman that came up, it's right along 21st Street. It's right on the edge of the city, and it is sort of an odd pocket.
I mean, to me, that seems like a place where we would like carve that out or something, because it seems like the right place for maybe that. Because unless we develop a sewer line, or if a business that comes along that has that kind of financial ability, they're not going to put in a sewer line all the way out there, right? So,
Well, especially if it's just for a discrete project and property, I have to think, Jay, maybe you can help me understand it. It's got to be a pretty big undertaking to get sewer out there.
There's quite, our main trunk line goes further south from the 21st Street entry out to the sewer district.
yeah.
So to bring it over there, it's quite a distance.
Yeah, that might be something that I'd want to consider in some of that spot, or that
Right.
carved out area.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a real catch-22 because if the land develops without sewer, if you have several parcels, then every time it develops, there's less and less incentive to extend sewer to the one remaining property. So,
Yeah, but they bought it and it doesn't have sewer right now. So
That's an interesting quandary because, I mean, if that's the one thing that's lacking for Mr. Smith, I think maybe there are opportunities beyond the more immediate uses, but what does that entail to do? It's just that's a huge factor for me when I heard that comment. So thanks for sharing that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry, we can't have you speak out there because then you're not on the recording, nobody can hear you, etc. But we can follow up later on that. Yes.
It was brought up that conditional use permit. Able to be that kind of crazy. In the day, that was a good solution, but maybe you can address why that doesn't really work in today's.
yeah, so the state of Utah changed the rules on conditional use permits. Conditional use permits are permitted uses. So if you say, auto salvage lot or a self-storage is conditional use, they can put there. You can only do things that mitigate the impacts of the use. Now, it might be possible that it's impossible to mitigate all impacts, but that's fairly uncommon. So basically, you're saying yes, just with standards.
That's why our ordinance, all of our C's and going away because it just doesn't work like it used to.
Yep, that's right. Yes.
I just thought we ought to bring that up. I wish that would work. That would be really neat.
Yeah.
But it doesn't anymore.
Right.
I think it also creates uncertainty for the landowner and the business owner if they're looking at a conditional use. That still requires a conditional use approval, and if you're looking
And
at
can be retracted at any time. That's
yeah. So if you're looking at purchasing property and there's still a bit of a risk there, and I just think it eliminates the certainty that a business would need to make in the investment.
For sure. Okay, I've got a few more on my list, but
You're doing great.
okay. So where did the 11 things come from that are on the design standards?
So thank you for asking. So one thing that you asked in the work session is to compare to the standards of other communities, and we did take a look at some of the standards of other communities and looked at all the cities that surround Ogden, and Ogden has the lowest design standards. Everywhere else has higher design standards than Ogden, except West Haven. They have pretty comparable. So we did look at that. Really what we did is we took a bunch of pictures of industrial properties, showed them to the Planning Commission and said, what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? And we started to break down things of, oh, this has two materials. This has that little entry. That makes a lot of difference. That overhang makes a difference. We drove around to the sites and we just took things that they said, yeah, I like this, and we put them in a list, and that's where the list came from.
Okay. What about, there was a question about, and this might be something better just to follow up with the individual, but the non-permeable ground and the landscaping, kind of how, are those kind of conflicting?
Okay.
Parts of the ordinance.
So there are landscape requirements, and the most important place to landscape is out in the front. That's where you drive down, you see it. It's less important important, if you've got a storage yard or something, to put landscaping inside that storage yard doesn't serve a whole lot of purpose. So that it really focuses on, the standards really focus on exterior landscaping along the streets. And in some lots, if you do that front yard landscaping, you're going to have 10% of the lot impervious or pervious. So it works out. But we... yeah.
Impermeable.
We have had some cases where we've run the numbers and, yeah, they meet their front yard landscaping. It looks good, but they're under that 10% or 20% pervious surface requirement. And so out in the back in their storage yard, we said, you can't pave it all. You got to leave, this 1,000 square feet unpaved in the middle of the storage yard. And it doesn't serve an aesthetic purpose, and it just serves a stormwater purpose. So that's why proposing keep the landscape standards, and if those landscape standards require you to do 15% of the lot or 8% of the lot or whatever, that's fine.
Okay, and then what about the idea of like a sunset clause, or what happens if the business changes over, some of those questions?
Yeah, so we have not proposed that any existing business be affected by this ordinance. So if you're continuing to do a salvage yard, you're continuing to do self-storage, you can continue to do that. We have not proposed a sunset. We really haven't contemplated that. If that would be something, if the Planning Commission or Council wanted us to do, we could take up, looking out 50 years from now, or we're going to have those same things. I think that would be an item for another day. We're not proposing it, but if the Planning Commission or City Council wants to propose that, you could.
Okay, I've got a couple more.
Okay,
sorry.
That's okay.
Travis alluded to, some things that were discussed at the Planning Commission about residential next to the zones, and I'm feeling like there might be something that was missed in the ordinance. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes. So the proposal this buffer would be required between an industrial zone and any residential zone, single family, multifamily, any sort of residential zone that would require that buffer. I think the confusion was we had a standard where you had height limits, where you had like one multifamily zone, which might allow 45-foot high buildings, and another residential zone allowed 45-foot high buildings, but you had to shorten the buildings in between them, and it didn't make sense for the height limits. So that was a different topic, different context, and it only dealt with height. This deals with the buffers. So it would apply to any residential zone.
Great. And then what about historic property? Are you aware of this impacting any of the historic properties in those zones?
I'm sure there are. I'm not aware of any direct effect. I mean, the biggest one that pops into mind is the stock exchange building, but that's in a special zone with specific standards that we wanted to be very careful to protect the historic nature of that. So I'm sure there are. Well, I know that there are very old structures. Ogden's been around, but I'm not sure how this would or would not affect.
I'm sure one will pop up.
Yeah.
And then what about the dog food plant? Anything we can do about the way it smells?
Yeah. So the current ordinance does require that odors be mitigated for any sort of use currently, and I know the dog food plant's been a topic, and they've been required to put in scrubbers and things like that, and we can smell that it's not successful there. So this particular ordinance doesn't change any of those regulations. If you wanted to do something like that, you would have to do mitigations to the smells and things like that. So the existing limits continue to be in place, and the existing dog food plant continues to make dog food. So this proposal doesn't change this situation on that.
Any other discussion items or questions?
Chair, there's one more I had.
Yes.
Just as an anecdote,
Oh.
that used to, it was kind of a big item, more than 12
I did not
years
know,
ago.
yeah.
And, it was, yeah, it was, what was it called?
Nasal Ranger.
Nasal Ranger.
Nasal Ranger.
Yeah.
What happened to that?
I think it's probably still there, but I don't think it worked. But my next question is, should we, I mean, if council was to was still a viable use, but didn't want it to happen within 200, 300, whatever yards of the river, is that best handled?
Uh-oh.
Oh, well, it used to be. Sorry. Anyway, if that was something that is the best way to handle that, an overlay, or is that something we just say, I don't know, how would you handle that?
I would write some specific development standards that would require a specific setback from the river and add that as a section in the code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think then you were going to present to us some options.
Yes. Can you bring my presentation up again? Okay, so at the previous work session and tonight, I know there's been some discussions that the council may want to vote separately on some of these items. So what we've done is we've separated the one ordinance into three ordinances. One dealing with those top three issues, the uses. The second one's dealing with storage and towing and storage at towing and impound and auto repairs, and the third, the design standards. So we weren't able to divide the three uses into three separate ordinances because they all amend the same table, and so that became problematic. So what we're suggesting is that you can take a motion on each of those individually, the first three individually, and then do one motion on the full first ordinance, and then do a motion on the second ordinance and third ordinance. So on the junk or salvage yards and the used and rebuildable car lots, so if you want to accept what the Planning Commission had recommended and what staff recommends, you can do a motion to accept the proposal to prohibit new junk and salvage yards and used and rebuildable car lots in the M2 zone. Or if you don't want to adopt that, you can move to amend the first of the three ordinances as listed below. You'd remove a section and change a couple of the words, just as we've shown there. So that'd be the first decision point for you.
Okay. Can you tell us the other options as well?
Yes. So
Don't see anybody jumping to do anything.
Yeah, so also on the personal storage, we were going to do the same thing. If you agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation and want to accept that, you can do a motion to accept that. Or if you wish to not accept it, then there's language there that you could amend the ordinance to exclude that. In the athletic facilities, it's the same thing. If you want to adopt the Planning Commission's recommendation, you would move to accept that, and if not, there's specific language to not accept that. And then those three together, you would vote either as proposed or as amended. And then the second one would, the limits on storage and towing impound lots, just the area they can use this, they'd still be allowed, but just the area they would use would be limited. If you want to accept that, you would just move to adopt the second ordinance. And the third would be the design standards. If you want to accept the design standards, you would move to adopt ordinance 3.
So, Chair, if I can just add just a couple of things. There'd be one step in between where we are now and where we get to the changes that Barton had talked about. We do have the one ordinance, and we are proposing to split it into 3. So we would ask, if you want to do that, to make the motion to substitute the 2023-54 into these 3 ordinances first. And then the other thing, because those changes are already in the ordinance, I don't believe you would need to make a motion to accept. They're already in there. So if you want to change it, the motion would just be to take it out.
Okay, that makes it all so much more clear. Thank you. How are you all feeling? Do you, we had talked about possibly tabling until the other 2 council members are able to be present. I'm not sure if you have any comment or questions, Councilmember White?
I'm working to get my my thing off mute.
No
Sorry about that.
worries. I was doing like the 8
No,
second
I'm just
rule.
listening. But yeah, sorry. No, I'm just listening. I think there's a lot of questions still around if we've got at least a good ordinance, and so I think tabling it isn't a bad option at this point.
And I would just like to jump in from this side. I agree with that. I think the presentation has been very helpful. I think the public comment has been very helpful, very insightful. But it's also a lot to digest, and I don't think it's fair for the 2 that aren't here to move forward without them having that, A, not to have a vote on that, and B, not to be able to take the time to maybe digest and gather that information also. So at this point, I do think tabling it does sound like the most logical.
Yeah, agreed. Would anybody, other comments, or would you like to make a motion?
I don't see that if we were to make a motion to split this into 3 separate issues, would hamper would hamper anybody's issue with the 2 not being here. And I, it seems like if we were to give staff any kind of direction on how to make a clean ordinance to vote on, rather than to just check boxes and uncheck boxes, and which is kind of what we're trying to do if we take things out. And maybe that's too far. Maybe that's too hard to do today. Maybe, but I think we could make that motion that Mr. Symes mentioned, that to split it into 3. That we could at least do that today. I am kind of curious as to the feelings that y'all have, and after hearing from the public. We've heard from Barton a couple times now, and they've done an excellent job of trying to mold and make it work for us, but it would be nice if we could maybe have a little bit more dialogue before we just ceased it today and moved on.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm conflicted. The only thing I'm not as conflicted about is the design standards. I could completely get on board with changing the design standards. The other elements just seem too broad to me, too sweeping, and I just feel like it's going to impact a ton of people. kind of catching them off guard. I mean, I realize that the pending ordinance has been 6 months, right? So it's not catching people off guard. But at the same time, if you've owned land for your whole, for ages, then 6 months is not long enough to have people understand this change. So that's just how I'm feeling right now, but
I'm really struggling with the ordinance.
too much.
It's just too much. I know it's completely legal. We're not doing anything wrong by having the notice of pending ordinance, but to put everything on hold for 6 months is such a big move for so many private property owners and also so many businesses. Time is money, and that's a big consideration for me. But Laura Lewis kind of hit it on the head when she said the value to the city versus the value to the resident. That's a big deal. There have been so many certain circumstances for portions of the zones tonight that have been brought up, such as the sewer line, that for me beg for a scalpel, not a big bludgeon for a one size fits all. It's just such a broad proposal. So I'm okay if we need to make it a motion to break it up into 3 different ordinances, but other than that, we need more time to digest it, or just, I feel like there's some good parts of it that I can get on board with that make more efficient use of the space, like the ones that Mr. Hunter mentioned with the setbacks, etc. But other than that, I'm having a hard time getting on board with it all across the board. I can get on board with it in discrete areas, but I'm just struggling to get such a sweeping scale.
One of the things that has caused me some pause too is, the planning commission, what was the vote on this? Was it?
It was 7-2, I think.
7-2. Planning commission has a different filter that they look at things through. They look at it in compliance with general plan and community plans and some of those kind of things. They don't put value judgments on things, which is kind of our job. I have a huge amount of respect for our planning commissioners. I may, as a planning commissioner, have voted the same way they did because of general plan and whatnot. But speaking of general plan, and that's kind of where I wanted to get, we are on the eve of embarking on a new general plan, which hopefully will get us on the right page with all of these things. Our current zoning has been in place for a long time. Some of the things that we're trying to eliminate haven't been an issue, like the recreational things in industrials, because that isn't a problem, I don't think. I guess it could be, but it isn't and hasn't been. The recreational facilities we have are in commercial. As you've mentioned, maybe there was 1 or 2 that were in the industrial, but the ones we do have are in commercial. I guess the capitalist in me is winning out on this deal in my mind that, gee, if I owned that property, I'd like to do what I wanted to do. And I think we can probably address this in a little bit more of a surgical approach during a general plan redo. And so that's kind of where I find myself. If we weren't going to start a general plan, maybe this is how you do it. But I think we're getting close to doing that general plan. So, but if you're ready to receive a motion, I'll make that motion about dividing it up.
Glenn, do you have the language there for yourself?
We can have language. It sounds like the council is okay to table it for a week, so you could just incorporate that. Just give us direction with the motion to table to have it broken into 3.
I have it up.
Okay, yeah, whoever wants to do it.
You have it up? Go ahead.
And then Jerry will make that motion that we table this item. Let's see, ordinance 2023-54 until October 10th, giving staff some direction to divide the ordinance into 3 parts for individual votes. And look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a, oh,
Before that, are we going to remove the, I think we all agree on the athletic facilities. Do we want to remove that or just leave that in for now?
Just leave it for now.
I'm okay for just leaving it for now.
Sounds good. Sorry.
Deal
oh
with
no,
it.
that's
We'll
okay.
deal with it in the whole list.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Nadolski to table this item as spoken. It's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks so much for all the work. And thank you all so much for your feedback and engagement, whether you were online or here in the room. We really appreciate it. So that will be continued to, or tabled until next Tuesday, where it'll be on the agenda again. Okay, we have new business. We're going to welcome Glenn Symes, our Deputy Director of the City Council, to give us an update on the communications plan for proposed Union Station campus master plan development framework. It needs a comma in it somewhere. Can we add a comma to the title so I can breathe?
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Chair. The reason this item is on the agenda is because the council chose to extend consideration of this framework plan last week. So based on your rules and norms, anytime that happens, council staff comes back to the council the next week and provides an update on timeline or any issues that can be resolved. So right now, we don't have a timeline for that. Later this week, council staff, administrative staff, and legal staff will sit down and have a meeting to talk about master plans, community plans, all of those kinds of things, how they fit into the bigger picture as we continue to plan for the downtown. So hopefully after that meeting, we'll have a better idea of how we want to treat this framework plan, where it fits into the whole thing, and then we can come back after that to update the council on that. With regard to the main or overall Union Station campus master plan itself, there are some details I can share. So on Wednesday, November 15th, the administration will be holding a Union Station Advisory Committee meeting, as well as a public open house. That open house will run from 5:30 to 7:30 on that Wednesday, November 15th. At that open house, there will be several concept plans or options presented to the public for feedback. And so after some additional public engagement after that November 15th meeting, the city's CED department is anticipating narrowing down those concept plans or those ideas to a single concept by around February 2024. So if that can be done, administration is expecting to be on track for the completion of the full Union Station campus master plan a year from then, so February 2025. So those are some other dates that have to do with the larger plan itself. As I mentioned, when we have some of those internal meetings, we should be able to have a better idea of how we're going to handle this framework plan as it relates to all the other plans.
Thanks so much, Glenn. And that Union Station Advisory Committee, is that an open public meeting or is it just the advisory committee?
I don't know the answer to that. I might have to defer to Brandon Cooper or Damon to know if it's public. It was my understanding that they were, but I don't know for sure.
I don't know if they're in the room.
Back there. I'm
Do you
wondering
know,
if
Jay?
Open? The advisory committee? Okay. Yes, it is
Open
to the
public meeting.
and then the open house follows the advisory committee. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I think sorry, do you have a time on the advisory?
Yeah, it's in the morning. It's at 10 o'clock. I have it on my calendar.
Yeah, I've got it for you here.
Sorry, I knew I was going to miss some details.
No, that's
I
okay.
apologize.
No, I just
Yeah, so that's in the daytime, and then the open house is in the evening.
In the evening.
Potentially during our work session. Council
Yeah,
meeting.
unfortunately, those two conflict. That was those joint planning commission city council meetings. We've typically had the council go to the planning commission meeting, and so those two just happen to be scheduled at the same time. The joint meetings we try to keep to an hour, so I think we're anticipating like a 5 to 6. So hopefully there's not a ton of overlap, but yeah, in coordinating some of these answers, we noticed that was a conflict. So.
Great. Thanks so much, Glenn.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Glenn.
Did we say at 5 o'clock on that Wednesday?
That's what it says.
Okay.
5:30 to 7.
I just changed calendars, so my work and my council are not matching up. Okay, great. Okay, so finally, we have public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding any concerns or ideas you have on any topic. You have 3 minutes to speak. You can step up to the podium and have 3 minutes to speak. And if you'd like to raise your hand online, you would be welcome to speak as well.
Hi.
Hi.
It's Teresa Holmes, Ogden resident. What I'm here about is if we want our museums to be accredited, I heard over the years that we have to own the building that houses the museums. And we can't get accreditation, and we won't be able to get any grants hardly at all. I know Roberta had trouble with this, and we always said, well, if we have the building, we could get grants. So what are we going to do? Build another building and have them rent it to us? And you can't get grants unless we own the building. The developers can't own the building to get it accredited, from what I understand. And I've been reading up on accreditation quite a bit lately. And I think it would save us money if we just kept things in the building. Because no matter what they build, it's not going to be big enough to house 9 cars, or all of our exhibits. We could get accreditation, and that could probably get us a lot of grants to pay for things. So we're going to give our rights up to some developers to build a building that's not going to house everything when they're already all housed in the Union Station, and we could put in for accreditations. And I have some friends that are into museums back east, like Morgan Browning. He told me that it's good if we own the building to get accreditation. We cannot get accreditation unless we own the building. So finally, we own the building that the museums are in, so now they want them out. That's kind of like, isn't it a kind of a defeated purpose? What can we do about it? I don't know. I've been reading a lot on this. So the best thing to do is to leave the museums where they're at until we can figure out a better way to get accredited. Maybe Brandon's idea is great, but we can't get accreditation.
Thank you.
I like Brandon. I'm not mad at him. I just like the museums a lot.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I have Laura Lewis, I have something I want to say so you can think about this, why you're pondering the M1 and M2. When I walked in that salvage yard, I expected there was just parts and, people come and get a part. I learned that people make a living in there. They get engines, they rebuild them and sell them. They get parts, rebuild them and sell them. I also talked to a gentleman. He was getting parts off an automobile. He buys what some people would call as a clunker. And then he goes in there and he has the ability to restore that car. And he says, I have almost a new car for $5,000. I couldn't afford that car.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm almost done anyway.
Time.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it is almost like a public service, and it's supplying parts to other businesses. So think about that.
Thank you. Any other comments? I don't see any hands online. Come on up.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident.
Good job.
I appreciate the report about how you're going to continue community engagement for the Union Station master plan, and I'd like to point out that nothing has changed. We've talked about meeting people where they are. We've talked about childcare. We've talked about weekend meetings. We've talked about accessibility for folks that don't own their own businesses or work white-collar 9-to-5 jobs where it's okay to ask someone for time off, or you have a childcare issue. A lot of the focus groups that I've run for Dr. Madsen and some of the things I've done for the state, that is something we are now building in because our numbers increase proportionately when we provide childcare, when we provide transportation, when we provide food. So the other piece is I also didn't hear a single crosstab of who's going to those meetings. I want to remind you all that You have done the most equitable survey of Ogden ever when you did the HB 411 CREP thing. It was done by census tract. If you're not collecting data when people come in, it's the same group of people over and over. Or the data will tell you otherwise, that you need to have identification of sex, age range, and census tract. Where do these people live? You can have a person with an iPad just go, I don't want your information, but just go ahead and look, put your information in here and clear it out and tell me what census tract you lived in. And then we will know if we're really and truly reaching everybody or just people who live in Shadow Valley and the East Bench. This is supposed to be for everybody. It's supposed to be for the city. And we should make sure that all of the city has a voice. And you've done this before. The administration has never done a study like you did to look at CREP. And that should be the litmus test, because it is the most equitable survey ever done in Ogden. Census tract, age, income, race, ethnicity. You're only as good as your data. And we have a tendency to think that online surveys are good enough, or people walking around a room and counting. Oh, that's great. We need to know who are we really representing and who are we really involving, as opposed to just one specific group. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other movement. Any comments from administration?
Not at this time.
Any from council members?
I have a couple since we have Jay here.
Jay.
Yes, I have a couple for you.
He's on the spot.
I'm just curious what the plan is, because it looks great on the north end of Forest Green Park right there. They're putting in like railings and terracing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost done. What was the...
That has been requested from that neighborhood for a long time. We have a shared youth pass. Pass in there to get them up to the roundabout. So they've been walking on the streets with their kids and that, and it's been extremely dangerous because travel speeds in there are too fast.
And then that was my next question. It looks like they're putting in are they putting in a sidewalk on just past Peace Pond to the roundabout?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I can be done. I got what I needed.
South side.
Or south, yeah.
It's the south side.
Yeah, from
Buse Pond to the roundabout.
To the roundabout, yep. Perfect. Okay, well.
That's great.
And we're doing it very carefully because we're monitoring that old slide area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I walk there a lot, and so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Anything from you, Councilmember White?
Nope, I'm good tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think we'll adjourn from this meeting, but just so the public's aware, we've recessed the RDA meeting that's in a closed session at this time. We don't anticipate we'll come back into public session and make any votes or anything after that redevelopment agency meeting, so.
Motion. Oh, second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Nadolski, a second by Councilmember Heyer to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.